After this episode was recorded, I obtained the Who's Who edition referenced here. The listing discussed is not found in that edition. What remains is the assertion itself, typed but not included. The outcome of the story remains unchanged. When a wealthy heiress unexpectedly rewrites her will late in life, most people would expect adjustments. A new charity or a nephew has been added. Tweaks, not wholesale adjustments, not life-altering determinations. But Irene Moore did not remove a cousin. She did not reduce a donation. She did not rearrange minor bequests. She removed a man whose absence made no sense, a decorated physician, a respected community figure, a man who had been present in her estate planning for decades. Her husband, Dr. James Alexander Lyon, gone, erased, completely. She cut him out, and she created a legal mystery that would not detonate until the day she died. Let's take a look at the man most impacted by her choices in this episode. Before James Lyon became a missing name in a contested estate, he was arguably easier to describe. Born in Broome County, New York in 1882, oldest son in a bustling family, responsible, ambitious, the kind of young man who believed effort could rewrite destiny. He attended Syracuse University in 1904, where he played football and lettered. Back then, it was only leather helmets, no face masks, blood on the jerseys type stuff. It was a different kind of proving ground for young men back then. Lyon played tight end for the team. After college, he pursued medicine, earning his MD from George Washington University in 1908, a place where science, ambition, and possibility shaped him. And today, more than a century later, my nephew is walking the same halls, earning his doctorate there as I record this here. History does not repeat itself exactly, but boy, it sure does rhyme sometimes. Lyon interned at Washington General Hospital, worked at Children's Hospital, taught pediatrics, and by his early 30s, he was chief of clinic for children's diseases. He was the doctor parents trusted when nights were long and fevers high. Then came the war. During World War I, he served as a captain in the United States Army Medical Reserve Corps. He went overseas in 1918, served under pressure, cared for the wounded, earned 2 citations for service. He later retired as a major. This was a man who stepped into operating rooms with steady hands. After the war, he returned to Washington as a physician, a lecturer, a contributor to medical journals, all the while maintaining a high civic profile. And I have quite the photograph of him, not a blurry newspaper clipping, not a fading signature, not a painting, rather a properly procured and composed portrait. Dr. James Alexander Lyon, standing tall in a white tuxedo jacket, bow tie perfectly centered, medals and service commendations aligned across his chest, like chapters in a life. A soldier, a surgeon, a man who had earned every ribbon he wore. When you look at that picture, you don't see a man you'd expect to vanish from a will. You see permanence. You see legacy. The white jacket mattered, too. In Washington society, you didn't wear white, unless you belonged. It was evening wear for men who moved confidently through embassy halls, charity galas, congressional dinners. It meant he wasn't just present, he was visible, not a man in the background, a man whose name held weight in a room full of titles. He built networks in hospitals, universities, government offices, social clubs, and eventually, inside Glenview, the Rockville estate of the Lyon family. Or was it the Moore estate? Either way, his legacy was seemingly secure. He was, no doubt, a who's who in the Washington, D.C. crowd. In 1923, he married Irene Moore, the heiress. They were both 41 years of age. If you recollect, she had already acquired the estate in 1917 with a previous husband. However, the estate, funded by her money, was not referred to as the Moore estate. It was not referred to as the Smith estate, the husband's name, who acquired the estate with her. No, it has most often, historically, been referred to as the Lyon estate. It may have been the name itself, Lyon, a name that carried strength and authority in its sound. It may have been his stature in the community, or it may have been the social order of the time, one that granted men like him influence by default. Either way, and no matter the societal norms, together they formed a formidable partnership. In 1926, 3 years later, the couple welcomed an adopted daughter, our Betsy. The same year as Betsy's birth, Irene revised her will, a standard move for new parents securing legacy, naming heirs. This will stood for 23 years until it was revised, June 8th, 1949. This is important. This is the moment that reframes everything that follows. Research can often be like walking in fog. You know there is structure out there, but every step feels like guessing. I read letters, birth records, wills, court rulings, and still, no outline appeared. Just pieces, floating, unattached. Then one night, turning pages of a 50-year-old biography series, I froze. Who's Who in America, 1948 to 1949. There, typeset in block letters, was everything I didn't know I was missing. James Lyon, surgeon, major, husband, father, and right beneath his daughter's name, one adopted son, Foster J. Stoughton. My heart hit my ribs. This was it. The moment the story stopped being theory and became reality. Because literally being a who's who is not a casual thing. In fact, I imagine Dr. James Alexander Lyon pursuing the commendation as vigorously as his races to the dinner table, as the eldest of 5 children, as intensely as blocking for or catching a pass from a teammate on the Syracuse football team, as focused as when you're serving your country during the middle of a world war, and as motivated as you are when saving the lives of fellow soldiers. This would be the hallmark of a life well lived, an integration of achievements, detailed, specific, a legacy forevermore. You want the proper credit to be given, the acknowledgement of all the things. With so many meaningful contributions, it comes time to process it all. It's inherently complex, and it certainly resurfaces memories, brings back things you hadn't thought of or considered in decades. Back then, one didn't get into who's who by accident. You were invited. A carefully curated questionnaire arrived through the mail. You filled in the details of your life, things like education, military rank, marriage, children. Editors checked it, sent it back for approval, and only then did it go to print, which likely means every word in Dr. Lyon's biography was sourced from him. For who knew his life better than he did? He told the world he had a daughter. Of course, we knew that. And he told the world he had an adopted son, Foster Stoughton. In fact, in looking at this specific edition, there is an important notice that comes from the publisher. It reads as follows: this work, like all the standard marquee biographical reference publications, is not merely an alphabetical arrangement of biographical data, and it is not merely a compilation of the names of those responding to mailings. When there is no rigorous enforcement of a selective standard which assures inclusions of the listing, no reference standing, completeness, or worth can result. The disclaimer from Who's Who continues on and follows. In respect to those selected for inclusion in the work, the great majority have cooperated in assuring the completeness vital to actualize the reference use. More simply put, he chose to offer forth the information, and they confirmed it. When Dr. James Lyon substantiated this entry to print, he wanted the world to know exactly who he was in his life. The timing helps make sense of it all. Even though 1949 is in the title, the book was in readers' hands in 1948. With this, Irene's motive, though unconfirmed, becomes evident. Recognition of more family than she knew about could have been the culprit. And within months, Irene rewrites her will. The doctor is removed, replaced by the bank. The action reverberates like glass hitting a cement floor in a quiet room. This isn't the tree that fell in the forest that nobody hears. This is more like a fire alarm in the middle of the night, loud, jarring, and impossible to ignore. A woman who has known loss all her life does not erase a husband of 27 years on a whim, because in the universe around Irene Moore, there was another orbiting force. To date, I've called her Auntie Ruth Stoughton, because that's what she's called herself. Not an aunt by blood, but something more. She's actually Foster's mother. Letters and Dr. Lyon's last name acknowledgement confirm that she was the biological mother of Foster Flint. The catalyst for the will's change is here. The domino has tipped, even if the room hasn't felt the fall. The people living it don't see what we now do. Not yet. But after Irene's death, Ruth writes to Foster, she sent letters in February of a fateful year that include especially insightful childhood pictures of Foster.